Right, I understand that we're live, so we can move ahead. So welcome all to the meeting of the Regional Transport Subcommittee of today, the 28th of November. The meeting's being webcast and the recording will be available on the Cardiff Capital Region's website and also on the YouTube channel. So we're all singing, all dancing, aren't we now? So we have I think, well, we've got two substitutions, haven't we? So, John, you're substituting. Oh no, you're a member
Yeah,
for
remember this
RCT.
one.
It's only Andrew and I come in separately. We're interlopers. Then we've got Chris from Cardiff who's standing in for Councillor Dan Death. But apart from that, everybody is as delegated, so that's super. Do we have any apologies for absence today? Simon or Cleona, is there anything there from you?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We've got apologies from Councillor Morgan as Chair, from Councillor George, Councillor Crimmings, and as you explained, Councillor Diath is unable to attend, but Councillor Weaver is attending in place.
Super, thank you. Yes, I should explain. Totally understandable that that Councillor Morgan as chair is a bit tied up with flooding, etc. at the moment. So I'm stepping in as vice chair just for today. Do we have any? It's agenda item 2. Do we have any declarations of interest? And if so, the nature of them? I can't see any indications. And have any been advised separately? Do we know? No, all's quiet. So that's
None received, Chair.
super. Thank you. So going on to agenda item 3, that's the minutes of the Regional Transport Subcommittee back in on the 11th of July 2024. So can we take those as a true reflection of that meeting? I think we're happy to take this as a show of hands if everyone's happy that they're a true record. I can see hands up and I can't see any dissent, so I think we'll take that as excellent. Thank you all. We'll take that as a true reflection then. So agenda item 4 is the joint overview and scrutiny committee working group. So we're going to have a report from the strategic director of policy impact and partnerships. That's an impressive title, isn't it? To providing information on terms of reference, etc. So I think it's best if I just hand over to Colin for the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. And thank you, members, for the opportunity to present this today. So the purpose of this report was to provide information on the terms of reference for a JOSC, Joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee working group, which we focused on regional transport. This is to allow JOSC really to help us, to support us in making a meaningful and, as we say, their targeted contribution to the Regional Transport Plan, the RTP, Transport for CCR. Recommendations of the paper, as detailed in page 1, is recommended that RTSC note the terms of reference for the Regional Transport Scrutiny Working Group. So to give a little bit of background here, we actually briefed JOSC colleagues back in, I believe it was July initially. We had a briefing as part of the induction section with JOSC colleagues. And then subsequently, and there was a lot of interest in the development of a regional transport plan. And then the case for change was considered by the Joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee for South East Wales Corporate Joint Committee on the 10th of October. And that's where we took what had been approved by the Regional Transport Subcommittee, the case for change. The thinking was in JOSC that given the strategic importance of and potential significant impact region-wide of an RTP, that the Regional Transport Scrutiny Working Group should be established. So the purpose of this is to provide a deep dive into key aspects of the emerging RTP, to make sure there's a robust kind of round of pre-decision scrutiny ahead of final consideration of the plan and approvals by South East Wales Corporate Joint Committee. If we can keep in focus that those final approvals are going to be come May 2025 before submission to Welsh Government. So at the JOST meeting of 14th November, there was a discussion around the terms of reference and the agreement made as the next steps. So just very briefly, the draft terms of reference outline 3 themes which JOST will look at and provide further feedback to the Regional Transport Subcommittee and South East Wales Co-Procurement Committee. First theme's around about the policy landscape. So this is considering the national, regional, local policy landscape. There's a real question, and I know that Claire's already working on this paper around about who does what. What's the connectivity across Welsh Government, local authorities, the new role for the CJC, the national agencies. So this will provide recommendations on how we can strengthen some of that multi-level governance. The second paper is on regional bus. The second session will be on regional bus. This is really important. It's a key consideration for local authorities, comes up repeatedly in discussions with members here and otherwise. So we need to understand what those pressure points are, what's that forward path, if we are on a pathway to franchising, what that might look like, and to provide recommendations on regional coordination. And the final part was active travel, a really key consideration, again, funded from Welsh Government, but with consideration for delivery at local authority level. But how can we set the context for effective active travel policies at a regional level, and looking at road transport decarbonisation pathways and national design guidance and so on. So we've got 3 focus meetings for these, which will take place in December, January and February. So December 2024, January and February 2025. And in March, there'll be a report that will go to via the Regional Transport Subcommittee to the CJC. So that'll be in parallel with the development and consultation on the Regional Transport Plan. So Chair, with that, I commend the report, and I'm very open to any questions. Kelly and Claire are also here, who have been part of that group also.
Super, thanks, Colin. Over to members. Are there any comments on the report or queries for Colin, or are we happy to note the terms of reference? Don't appear to be any comments. I think there's some really interesting topics that they're going to be looking into. Just out of curiosity, are those meetings webcast or not? Because I'd love to duck into them. Do we know?
We'll check that with our monitoring officer, Jane. Jane, will the JOSC, the working group meetings be webcast? Would they be?
No, they're not webcast, and they're not technically a public meeting because it's a working group, but I don't see any reason why. Councillor Morgan, for example, Councillor Andrew Morgan, attends in his capacity as the portfolio holder, so I don't see any reason why our vice chair shouldn't also be invited.
Yeah. Oh, I might just do that then. That sounds interesting. No, it's the content of those meetings seem to be really interesting, and certainly to get a joined up approach on it. Mm-hmm. So yes, that's good. So therefore, are we happy to note the terms of reference for the Regional Transport Scrutiny Working Group? I believe we can do that by just a show of hands. So we
in order, Chair.
Excellent, we've got that, and no dissent, so that's agreed. Super. So we're going on to agenda item 5, that's the Regional Transport Plan. We've got the covering report, and Appendix 3 will be in the public session of the meeting, but when we go on to discuss Appendix 1 and Appendix 2, we will therefore need to move into a closed session. So Colin and Claire are going to present the report, the first part of the report, and then before we go on to the other 2 appendices, we will take a little pause while we move into closed session. So again, over to you, Colin.
Thank you very much, Chair. So just to work through this, I'll take the headlines here. We'll work our way backwards, but effectively the report, RTSA is asked to consider the draft RTP, approve the criteria to be used in the prioritisation tool, which Claire Cameron will speak to, and then also note the planned activity and timeline to publication and consultation for the RTP. As we know, this has been a journey that has been ongoing for some time. In fact, far before when we submitted an implementation plan for a regional transport plan. There was a regional transport authority formed in 2017. Officers and as a group of local authorities have been working in South East Wales very effectively together on regional transport for some 20 years. So that there's really an evolution here with this regional transport plan, and we feel that that's coming to a really good point. If we were to look at it in terms of the feedback that we received on the initial plan, so that was issued on the 10th of October to Regional Transport Subcommittee. We had a deadline of the 21st of October for written comments and submissions to come in. We were seeking comments very specifically from our local authorities to begin with. That was from members and officers also. So we received a good number of responses to that. Likewise, in this period, we've also been seeking comment from Welsh Government, so that's relevant teams within transport, planning and economy, and Transport for Wales, a variety of relevant departments. The team internally at CCR, working with officers, worked very hard to make sure we categorise these comments appropriately to understand the nature of them and how they would like to see us take corrective action with this very first draft of a regional transport plan. So it was an initial draft. And the feedback was around about 200 comments that we categorised and took through. I know that the feedback on the regional transport plan, just some of those headlines that we outlined in there, that it reflected well CCR's ambition, that it was very clear that transport is not the answer in and of itself. And that's a critical principle of this plan, that it was comprehensively presented and it gave some clarity around about CCR's intention for transport in the region. There were, however, some challenges in regards to how it will align with a strategic development plan. If a strategic development plan is scheduled for 2031, for example, how do we ensure that strategic spatial planning and regional transport planning can align in the meantime? We were able to update aspects of the data because some of this data was pre-pandemic, and colleagues at Transport for Wales have helped with that. And also to recognise our successes to date. You know, we've got a major success in the Metro programme, for example, but other aspects. We were also asked to look at the objectives. We're halfway down that funnel of sharpening those objectives, so that's a good process to go through. So what were the changes we've made to this iteration that we've shared with Regional Transport Subcommittee? Well, there are substantial revisions. Again, we're refining and getting this to a point where we're happy to take it out to wider consultation. But there were structural changes, looking at how the document is structured and flowed. We've streamlined the content. You know, obviously, if you want to take this plan out to wider public consultation, which will be where we'll get to, we need to make sure that it can tell a very compelling story, but also can tell it in a way that can be understood. So there will be iterations of the plan moving forward, which are easy to read versions which are targeted at specific groups, versions which are very accessible. The evidence, we've revised and updated the data and evidence, being able to look at the transport movements, both inter-regional and intra-regional. It's been really good to have that up-to-date data. The ambition and commitment, we've made the plan more explicit in the commitment of partners and Welsh Government and Transport for Wales. And in terms of the vision, objectives and policies, we've refined those. We've refined the vision based on these round of consultation, spoke to either in person or online with all 10 local authority member and officers. We've refined those objectives, although they'll be refined further as we work through some of the data. We want to set, wherever possible, very smart objectives that will partially come through the regional transport delivery plan. So what we've started to do is not just set an objective, but also to make sure that we're saying these are the kind of strategic activities that underwrite that, and these are the kind of outcomes we'd expect to see. And finally, the policies. The policies are a critical area. I think there are 30 plus policies, and these policies are what set the framework and the context for what we will be able to do over the 5-year period of the plan. With that, I'll hand over to Claire to talk about the regional transport delivery plan. So this would be the specific part of the plan which is emerging, where we'll be able to look at schemes and areas of focus and how they'll be prioritised, because one of the things we've done is share those prioritisation criteria to get feedback and approval from members.
Thanks, Carl. Yeah, we've shared with you the criteria that we're working with Transport for Wales on, but the intention is they've worked through a first sift of all the schemes that the local authorities have submitted, with the intention of looking at what is within our remit and what is outside of our remit, and listed them in order, and then looked at them against the objectives, the current objectives within the regional transport plan, and tying them to the emerging policies. The intention for the next step is to get more detail, and we're waiting for more detail now from local authorities by the end of this week, with the intention that in December we work through the assessments to look at all of the schemes and then put them into some kind of order within types of schemes, with the intention then of having further meetings with the local authorities in the middle of December to see how that regional transport delivery plan will ultimately look, and then present back to you through first a briefing session in January, and then a formal board meeting in January, prior to going to Corporate Joint Committee for approval, subject to your agreement.
Thanks, Clara. That's ideal. Other than that, Chair, it's just to say that in terms of the timeline that we've set up for moving forward, some of the key dates, we will need to establish another regional transport subcommittee in mid-January to bring back the proposed final versions of the regional transport plan and the regional transport delivery plan. So we will share with members that date. We're working with our Democratic Services team on that. That will mean that we can go with these final versions, hopefully recommended to the South East Wales Corporate Joint Committee on the 27th of January. And we'd aim to start public consultation in February, so the timeline is detailed in the paper as well. Obviously, there are moving parts in that, and as much as possible, we are trying to stick to those very tight dates, but we will work towards that, and we'll certainly keep members and other key consultation stakeholders up to date. Thank you.
Thanks, Colin. I think that the imperative in that is to get a meeting date in people's diaries as soon as possible, because if anybody else is like me, I'm booking through into March now. So
Yes.
you know, we do need to get those dates set so that we can make sure that we're quorate and make sure everybody's got an opportunity to input fully. So are we content with oh, Rhian, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, it's possibly a bit of a stupid question. In the pack we were given for the meeting, there is now the draft regional transport plan, excuse me, but it's dated the 22nd of November. So I can see there are changes from the version we saw in September. Is there any way of getting like a black line document? Sort of track changes, so it's easier to see what has actually changed in it?
I can
It's
respond to that.
significantly changed. Sorry, Carl.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, Councillor Howells. Yeah, it's absolutely. We'd considered and we'd started to track those changes through the comments, but there've been considerable changes, so it would have been.
I can see that, but it just okay. So it just would look too much of a mess to do that.
It would, because there's been significant movement with it. With over 200 comments to work through, and some of the comments we were able to coalesce into areas and say, look, structurally, there's good advice to change the ordering in a way that makes sense. There's good advice to change the content, but so that's where it is.
Okay.
Councillor Howells, we have got a list of all of the comments and a list of how we've dealt with them, so we could share that with yourselves. We have shared the individual local authorities with the officers of what their comments are and how we've dealt with them, but we could bring a comprehensive one back, to members to let them know how we've dealt with their comments, if that helps.
I mean, I wouldn't want to give anyone loads of extra work, but if something like that already exists, that could be quite helpful. Thank you.
It would do, and I think it's just about, we just need to get make sure it's compliant and it's not personally identifiable in any way, etc. For sure, but I think we're moving to a full discussion on this anyway, aren't we? So
do you know, it might be something, Colin, that would be useful to just circulate to members offline, and then they can come back with any queries rather than put it in as a full agenda item, because it's an aid to understanding, really, isn't it? That
Absolutely, yeah.
Circulating, so that would be helpful. Councillor Morgan, John, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, Chair, first of all, just to let, I am having problems with my Wi-Fi this morning. I'm dropping in and out. But what I want to say was that basically extremely pleased with the process so far. And the meeting that we actually had with Claire and Colin, I found it very informative and useful. I know officers felt the same. We went through our concerns and the points that we had put forward. So thank you for that. We're really, really pleased that everything has been taken in, you know, that everything is being looked at seriously then and considered. I think on transport that day, to see how our trains actually worked, because part of the meeting I had to take on the train with my telephone because I missed the connection. So, but no, just to thank Colin and Claire for what they're doing on this project. Thank you.
Super, thanks. Well, I can't see. Oh, Amanda, Councillor Owen, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Burnett. I'd just like to echo John's comments as well. I think officers as well as us as members have really appreciate the up-to-date information and the process as well. And I think, you know, by having that clear information and updates passed on to us, I think it makes it easier to go through the process. So thanks both on that as well.
Super, thank you for that. Yeah, as I said, I can't see any more comments from that. So I would suggest that we move into private session now, so that we can discuss the rest of the report, unless any issues with that. So first of all, can I see if there is agreement to move into private session, into closed session? I need a show of hands for that. Yeah, there's lots of hands going up, so that's great. So if I could ask for the live stream to end, and if you could provide confirmation once that's happened.